Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I'm honestly so thrilled you're joining me today because we're going to look at something that literally transforms how we interact with large language models. I mean, if you've been messing around with AI for a while, you know that sometimes getting it to just think straight, it kind of feels like an uphill battle, right? Well, today we're going to explore how to seriously upgrade an AI's reasoning capabilities using a pretty amazing technique called self-ask prompting. So let's just dive right into it.
It's a super frustrating scenario, and I bet we've all been there. You're sitting at your computer, staring at a prompt interface, just asking yourself, why does an AI model, a system that has literally read and processed the entire internet, still completely fail at connecting the dots between simple facts? It's wild, right? It knows almost everything, but sometimes it just totally lacks basic logic when you ask it to put two and two together.
And this brilliantly illustrates that exact problem. Let's take two very simple questions. Who won the Masters in 1994? And when was Justin Bieber born? Now, if you ask a standard AI these individually, boom, it's going to give you the correct answers instantly. But consider the contrast when you mash them together into a single complex question. Something like, who won a Masters tournament the year Justin Bieber was born? Standard prompting often just falls apart here. The AI suddenly gets super confused. And why is that? Well, combining known facts into a single compound question forces the model to do something it really isn't naturally great at, which is multi-step reasoning.
So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the complex question problem. Second, introducing self-ask. Third, the self-ask template. Fourth, real-world applications. And finally, number 5, limitations.
All right, jumping right into section 1, the complex question problem. Let's diagnose exactly why our incredibly smart AI stumbled on that simple golf and pop star trivia question.
The real core of the issue is what researchers call the compositionality gap. Basically, this is the gap between an AI's ability to memorize individual facts and its ability to actually reason and make connections between those facts on the fly. The absolute crucial point to remember here is that the AI isn't lacking knowledge, not at all. It knows when Justin Bieber was born, and it knows who won the Masters. But when you hit it with that compound question, the model tries to recall the answer as a single pre-existing fact in its database, rather than actually synthesizing the information. Essentially, it tries to jump straight to the finish line without bothering to run the race.
So now that we understand the problem, let's look at the solution in Section 2, Introducing Self-Ask Prompting.
Self-ask prompting is a real game changer. It's a technique that prompts the model to explicitly state follow-up questions before it even tries to answer your main query. Think of the AI like a detective. I mean, you definitely don't want a detective to just walk into a complex crime scene and instantly guess who the killer is, right? You want them to gather intermediate clues, ask follow-up questions, and logically solve the whole case step by step. Now, you might actually be thinking to yourself, wait, isn't this just chain of thought prompting? Well, it's similar for sure, but self-ask goes a huge step further by actually forcing the model to explicitly generate the specific sub-questions it needs to answer first.
Let's break down how this actually builds mechanically. The flow is incredibly structured. So, Step 1, you provide the main question. Then, Step 2, the model itself generates a follow-up question. Moving to Step 3, the model provides an intermediate answer to that specific follow-up. And the cool part is, it repeats Steps 2 and 3 as many times as it needs to. Finally, Step 4, it synthesizes all those intermediate clues into the final answer. By breaking the query down into these bite-sized conversational steps, we are quite literally forcing the AI to think logically.
All right, time for the highly actionable part of our explainer, Section 3, the self-ask template.
You're going to want to pay close attention to this. Here is the literal text framework you provide to the model to trigger this detective behavior. You set up a one-shot or few-shot example using this exact phrasing. Are follow-up questions needed here? Yes. Follow-up. Insert your sub-question. Intermediate answer. Insert your answer. So you show the AI this pattern with a few examples, and then you just append your actual question at the very end with, are follow-up questions needed here? When the AI starts generating its response, it's going to mimic this exact structure. It entirely stops guessing and starts actually investigating.
So we have the theory down and we have our template. Let's move right into Section 4, Real-World Applications.
Our source material highlights 4 major use cases where self-ask just absolutely drastically improves output accuracy. We're talking complex customer support, research and academic assistance, legal document analysis, and creative content generation. Let's look at legal analysis, for instance. Instead of just asking the AI, hey, is there a conflict between Clause A and Clause B? The AI explicitly asks itself, what does Clause A say? And then, what does Clause B say first? This ensures it doesn't miss those super critical nuances.
Let's ground this concept a bit more with that customer support example. Say a customer asks, "Why is my internet slow?" Well, a standard AI might just spit out a generic top 10 list of basic fixes, pretty unhelpful. But a self-ask AI, it acts like a real living technician. It asks follow-ups like, "What time of day does it happen?" Or, "Are you on Wi-Fi or Ethernet?" Or, "Have you restarted the router?" It entirely prevents those generic, unhelpful guesses by generating targeted diagnostic questions first, which obviously dramatically improves the whole user experience. And actually, here's a truly fascinating secondary benefit. Because self-ask so clearly separates the sub-questions and the intermediate answers with those specific tags we talked about, it creates the absolute perfect structure to hook the AI up to external, trusted search engines or company databases. So, instead of the AI relying purely on its own internal memory for the intermediate answer, you can have a script that detects the follow-up text, runs that sub-question through Google or your internal wiki, and then feeds the verified fact right back into the prompt. I mean, it practically eliminates hallucinations for factual queries. How cool is that?
Of course, as amazing as this technique is not magic. Let's look at Section 5, Limitations. There's a pretty stark contrast to be aware of here. On one hand, we see exactly where self-ask shines, which is factual reasoning and logical puzzles. Honestly, it's amazing when there's a concrete answer hidden behind multiple steps. But on the flip side, we have to look at where it struggles. Self-ask totally fails if the query is purely subjective, abstract, or opinion-based. Also, keep in mind that it relies entirely on the model's baseline ability to decompose a question. If the model you're using is just too small or lacks basic comprehension, it won't even be able to generate the right sub-questions in the first place. You definitely need a reasonably smart foundational model for this to work effectively.
And that brings us to the end of today's explainer. But I really want to leave you with this final provocative thought. What complex problems will you solve now that you can actually teach your AI to ask the right questions? Seriously, the next time an AI gives you a shallow or disconnected answer, don't just rewrite the prompt in all caps hoping it'll get smarter. Force it to slow down. Give it the self-ask template we went over, and just watch it reason its way to the truth. I highly encourage you to take this framework and experiment with it right now. I promise you're going to be amazed by the results. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredibly powerful tool, and keep experimenting.